Good afternoon. Hope you're doing well. And here it is 3:35. Sorry for being about 5 minutes late on the west coast of these United States of America. This video dropped today that I want to react to. And we'll see what's going on because I think I have some weird audio interference, but hopefully that's not too noticeable. Okay. So I want to spend about an hour looking at this. The video itself is about 20 minutes. So I kind of just want to jump into it. It's a reaction video. I've seen it already. So this is a video that I've already watched. And it is posted by Dr. Peter Boghossian. Okay. So obviously for those who are Armenian will go, hey, he's Armenian. Yes, he is. Now here's the interesting thing. He's a philosopher. He specifically deals in the realm of epistemology, which is the study of knowledge. And then he does something called street epistemology. And they've done this actually quite a bit, and there's all sorts of recordings online with religious people and challenging them on their religious beliefs, whether they actually think they know it or believe it. And then him and a bunch of colleagues some years ago wrote these fake articles and submitted them into some journals, some academic journals, and these were completely made up articles with data and stuff like that, made up data, and they got accepted, shockingly got accepted, and so he's gotten into trouble and stuff like that. So this is a video he posted today, and it's titled "Confrontation at Portland State University. Did I harm students by asking this question?" And it's very interesting, very, very interesting. So I'm not going to take any more of your time. We're going to jump into this. You guys pay attention to it. By the way, Dr. Boghossian is an atheist. So I am not in agreement with him when it comes to obviously his atheism and most likely some of his philosophy. But I am in agreement with a bunch of the stuff he has to say when it comes to our cultural stuff. So we're going to maximize this so you get will make me smaller over here. So he is in the midst of having a conversation with a bunch of students, and then they play this sort of game or exercise, and it's like how firmly you stand on a subject and stuff like that. And then he gets interrupted. Some profanities are shouted at him, and then the conversation will focus on this from there.
What would it take for you to move, not all the way over there, just one line, just one line?
I guess if they told me how many genders specifically there were, I can't think of anything that would change my opinion, I guess. But if you got some friends,
Oh, you're giving me the finger? Hi. I'm standing in front of the social work building. I'm harming individuals by asking that question. Well, you want to come down and have a conversation about it? Why do you want to come down and have a conversation? Oh. Okay, so what would it take for you to move to the strongly agree?
In this man's class, after a long, controversial 10 weeks of lectures in this giant auditorium on the final day, he posed a question to students. He says, if anybody has disagreed with anything I've said over the last 10 weeks, come down and sit in this chair in a spotlight in the middle of the auditorium. Here's a platform. Tell me to my face. Which I'm glad. I was the only one who walked down and you gave me an A.
Look, so I think that's pretty cool that I guess that professor gave him an A, but this is essentially what's going on in a bunch of our classrooms in the United States. I mean, how many people would have the guts to get up and disagree with their professor in a large class, say like 150 students, go in front and then essentially say, here's why I disagree with you, and then be grilled, right? And what would be the repercussions from your classmates, right? Like if you go up there and you say, well, I disagree that there are, however many genders that they say they are, and you say there's only two, like you still have to live with these people, right? In a university context for the next 2, 3, 4 years. And are we expecting a bunch of 18, 19-year-olds to be that bold and to do that under that kind of pressure? And that's apart from the whole conversation, just commenting on that guy's experience. And this happens a lot on different subjects. Okay. So now we're going to see that group that was up there on the roof, it looked like, giving the middle finger and shouting, telling him to leave because he's harming students, come down and confront him. There is some profanity in here, by the way. Just going to give you some fair warning there.
Excuse me. Hi, I'm so curious about what's happening out here.
Oh, it's a critical thinking game where we take a look at claims and you
Okay.
step on a line you want to play.
Well,
You want to watch the game played?
well, we were watching from up there actually because we happened to see the sign from up in the School of Social Work, which is on the 6th floor, and some of our trans students saw the statement. There are only two genders.
Well, thanks for coming down to talk.
It was pretty activating and upsetting not knowing the context. We thought it was sort of a statement that was being made, but not a thought exercise necessarily.
Would you like to see how the game is played?
No.
No. I think we understand
Is it something that should
Yeah.
be a game, though?
An exercise? You want to use defund the police as one?
Well, just thinking about what it looks like.
Yeah.
What does it look like
To
to
the
see
whole
like
community.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 white men with a sign that says there's only two genders? You could have been like the Westboro Baptist Church girl.
What is white? Why did you identify us on the basis of our race?
Well, are you the best people to be hosting that dialogue about?
No, but you.
Representative of that community.
Okay, but I asked you a question. Why did you identify me and these people on the basis of their race?
What it looks like, right? Kind of like that activating, triggering aspect of it all.
So you think that it's morally acceptable to identify people on the basis of their race?
It's not a moral question. It's a matter of like the fact
It's
that
just
those
about
identities
power and
already
privilege.
exist.
Yeah, and identity and representation, right? So if you had a bunch of queer folks out here asking those kinds of questions, and there was
Well, how do you know we're not queer?
that's true. I don't know, but there's not sort of a representative, holistic, inclusive feeling, especially from up on high. We're looking down and we see this statement being.
Oh man, I love. By the way, this part's probably my favorite part of this whole conversation. Okay, so I love it. This guy just assumes these guys are all white, right? Just because of the way they look. I mean, if that's not racist, I don't know what is, because he's wrong. Dr. Boghossian is of Armenian heritage, and I don't know the details of it, but he was born here in Massachusetts. And so just knowing that and knowing that a bunch of Armenians escaped a genocide and went to the East Coast, I will almost bet that his parents and grandparents were genocide survivors. And as an Armenian, I wrote this on Twitter under when he posted this, and I said, when people judge you on your whiteness, I think he should have told them, hey man, my people group have been oppressed more than like you can imagine. Like you're standing here and just passing these judgments. And then I love that she says, if there were queer people who were, representing this and saying it and being inclusive. And then he says, how do you know we're not queer? She's like, you're right, I don't. So why are you making that kind of a judgment, right? It's hilarious. And then the best part is she goes, looking at it from up on high. Like the irony of that situation, right? Like looking down on you from, that's not what she means, right? But looking at you from up top in our ivory tower setting, and you peasants here are, making these statements, and we're just going to pass judgment on you and then just assume you guys are all straight white males. She's wrong. Or that guy's wrong. And look, she frankly has no idea whether these people identify as males, as females, as non-binary, as white, black, whatever it may be. She has no idea. She hasn't even asked them. She and her group have made a judgment based on a statement that says there are only two genders. It's essentially like that thing they do. They go out like abortion is wrong, change my mind, or whatever. The president cheated, change my mind. So this sort of, this should be something that's done in the public, and it's meant to get conversations going, and looking from the top on you, and making that kind of a judgment. You guys aren't all inclusive, as if, by the way, now in our culture, in order for us to make any kind of a statement against anything or for anything, we need to include everybody that's a part of every single group, right? And looking at this whole group, I think there's only one guy in that group. The rest are all female. I mean, if that guy wasn't there, it would be even more hilarious for her to say this, right? And then she talks about, oh, but you're like a privileged group. You guys are males and this and that. I mean, come on. Let's go back to it.
We're curious about it. We're also just worried about the harm being done to passersby.
What is the harm?
So there are
What's
people
the
who
harm?
people who went home because it was so
Yeah.
triggering and
We had some
activating.
students.
So I
had
think
to leave.
the end result is
You know you're on film, right?
that is totally fine.
Okay.
There are real people who are really hurt by the statements. I
What were they hurt about?
question that because that's not how they identify, and so it seems like a really triggering statement to just say there are two genders if that's not been your experience. So it's very harmful and very hurtful, and there's human lives that were affected. So I think that's the message we're trying to send is to maybe consider the questions that you're asking or posing before you begin your thought experiment.
Whoa. That's insane. Okay, so let's look at the implications of that, okay? Let's see, hang on here. Okay, we're going to see the implications of that. She's saying before you ask a question, before you interact with people, you should really consider like if that's going to trigger people, hurt people. And hurt people is, I mean, that's very important to, for our consideration here. Hurt people how? Is he physically harming them? No. Is he of any physical danger to them? No. They're bothered by it. They're hurt maybe emotionally by it. But who isn't? And like what subject can we talk about where there isn't going to be someone that's going to be hurt and offended by that? And what we're essentially saying is if you got to consider that. If people are going to be hurt and offended by what they're saying, then you shouldn't say it. Okay, or you should refrain from saying it. And maybe a contradiction here would be what they're saying. Right? Like, did they really consider the people that are going to get hurt and triggered by the statements that they're making? Like, what if I get triggered by just their entire ideology? Should they not make it? Now it's being recorded. It's going to be all over the internet. And we're all going to be, bothered by all this stuff that they're saying. All right? So I find it hypocritical that they're actually trying to push that and it not realizing it. I think it's kind of sad that they're not realizing the stuff they're saying. You got to represent every group, and then they're not representative of all groups, right? And they're talking to a minority here, right? Like, and I know he grew up in the United States, and people would say, well, he's falls in category to the maleness and stuff. Like his last name sets him apart, if you know what's going on. If you're actually familiar with any aspect of history, his last name will set him apart and put him into a minority camp. But they don't know any of this stuff. But hey, they can do that, but he can't.
Are you curious about like what we're bringing to you at all, or do you have?
I'm thinking about, I'm extremely curious and I'm extremely respectful. I genuinely respect the fact that you came as opposed to 7 or 8 of you giving me the middle finger and saying fuck you to me. So yeah, so
what do you gain from this? Like, what is your reason that you just want to cause trouble, or like why are you here?
So I'm fascinated. I do street epistemology, and I'm fascinated if the people. Epistemology is from the Greek, basically how you know what you think. Okay, so street epistemology is taking it out of the university and bringing it into the street. So I'm very curious. Okay, a sidewalk or a.
This is like 20-year-old.
This isn't street epistemology. You're doing.
I love this part. So he says, I'm doing street epistemology. And she says, is this a street though? Like, the kind of stuff you have to pick at, right? Like, the idea is not like you have to be on a sidewalk in a city street doing epistemology. It's just doing epistemology outdoors, outside of the classroom, and interacting with people. It's like, this doesn't fit the category of a street, and so you can't be doing that. His response is pretty chill and cool. Check it out.
This on the
Okay, if you don't like the word street, you can call it plaza epistemology, whatever. But the idea is you take it out of the university and you see if the reasons that people have for things justify their confidence in it. So this is a confidence scale. We can do this with any claim you want. We can do this with a mayor of the city. We can do this with should the United States be funding Ukraine? I think it's $800 billion. Should the United States, is it more important to control inflation or employment? And we put people on a spectrum. They start on, let me just explain again. So you asked, so I'll tell you. So what am I going to do?
I think what we're just saying is, and I think those questions are thought-provoking and important questions to ask folks in our community. I think what we were struck by was the statement on the board that it wasn't a question and that there was no context clues for folks, especially trans folks, to know that this was not your belief, but this is more of a thought experiment.
Okay, would you be more comfortable if it was a question? Like if I put a question mark?
Sure.
Okay, I'm more than happy to put a question at the end.
A question is a question and not a statement. Right?
More than happy to.
Some type of warning or a statement of like what you're doing on another board so people can walk by and like try and understand that. Because from afar it looks,
This is a thought experiment.
Yeah.
This is
what we're asking people.
I'm more than happy to do that.
And then that way it can kind of.
I'm more than happy to do that. I only have one board, but I'm more than happy to put on this is a thought experiment and put a question mark. If I put a question mark, I could. I don't know. I'm worried that people wouldn't be able to see it, but I'm more than happy to. If I put a question mark at the end and then I put another one, it's not really. It is a thought experiment, but it's more of an exercise / game starts thought experiment. If I put that on the end, would all of the
Okay, so before they move on, I want to comment on this. Like, I don't agree with him, by the way. I don't agree with Peter Boghossian here that he should be okay to do that. Like, that's a personal decision, I guess. It could be okay. I mean, I don't think he has to do that. You don't have to warn people that they're going to be confronted with messages they don't like. Right? Like, you just don't. I drive through the streets with my family and I see all sorts of crazy stuff out there. Okay? And nobody warns them. Nobody warns me. And they're offensive to me. I don't think anybody has to warn me. Right? It's like, by the way, I mean, male walking by, right? Like what if his presence, he's just and some people have said this, he's a white male, he's just walking down the street, and it's going to trigger people. Or he's a white straight male or something like that. Or he's a Christian guy who holds beliefs that are contrary to what you hold. Like, is he supposed to wear a shirt that says, be careful, I have opinions that you might disagree with. I might trigger you. Right? But maybe I should make a shirt like that, huh? Maybe we should make a shirt that says, I might hold opinions that you might disagree with. Okay? You should do a video going through his atheist street post. Hey, that's not a bad idea, right? Let's make the shirt. I hold opinions you might disagree with. Warning. I think I'm gonna make that. It's not a bad idea. Someone write it down. I got to get my friends who are pretty good designers to start working on that. That's what that guy's saying. Have we really gotten to such a place as a society? Have we gotten so sensitive, right, as a society, where we have to be warned at every single thing because it might bother us? It might, like, what's the whole point of our education system, right? Is our education system kind of like so lost where we're not strengthening people in logical reasoning and argumentation, but we're just like, hey, by the way, there might be some people that might say stuff that you might disagree with. And they said that people left. People literally got up and left because they were hurt by there are only two genders. Instead of actually confronting and trying to argue their point and saying, no, you're wrong. Here's why. Here's some scientific reasons. Here's some philosophical reasons. Here's some sociological reasons, right? Like some of these people try to do that, and we'll see that. But that's just crazy to me. Okay, let's jump back in here.
Concern vaporize?
Writing's not that easy, but Grammarly can help. This sentence is grammatically.
No, probably not, because we're talking about real humans with their lived experience and their positionality, their identities, you know, and sort of I might have a very different personal feeling walking by because it doesn't target my identity specifically. So we're just sort of here to sort of advocate and elevate who might be harmed by a statement like
What do you mean by harmed?
harmed.
Yeah.
Well, people who have been like historically and currently oppressed, right, by dominant systems, patriarchy, whiteness, masculinity, all of the systems that harm people who don't fit within those sort of more rigid.
That's why you want a question and not a statement.
Can I also ask, like,
Now, I just want an answer. That's why you want a question, not a statement?
I think a question is an invitation, right?
More than happy to make it a question.
Participate in this conversation. It's
More than happy to do that.
You know, you're representing, you know, with your identity, a belief, perhaps especially when it's a statement. And so what it looks like is you're out here saying there are two genders, and then anyone who doesn't fall within those two sort of binary boxes.
I'm more than happy to do that.
That's where the harm comes from.
More than happy to say this is a thought experiment. No, let me just finish. More than happy to do that. But it seems that if I did that, that would not be enough.
But you might have.
But then
to
I just
I might not be the person to, you know, again, I think asking folks who hold those identities, sort of if that is enough. So asking queer students, asking trans students, asking gay students, if you're asking about race or poverty or religion, or people who are part of those groups can really inform you better than I can.
You wanted to say, I wanted to hear her through.
no, I get
So frustrating, right? Like that we would actually have to go and ask people, hey, are you okay with me disagreeing with you in the following ways? Like, is this going to bother you? Oh, it's not? Okay, then I can do it. Talk about oppression. Talk about controlling speech, right? That's what it essentially comes down to. Now, yeah, it's not the system really, but if you get a large enough group, then they're going to control your speech, right? To not be able to go and just say whatever you want to say, and then if people disagree with you, then they're going to tell you to your face that they disagree with you, as these people are, by the way. Notice they are. And notice that she's like, oh, but I'm not, my identity's not that. I'm just saying they would know better than me. I don't know where this idea comes from that somebody who's had an experience just knows better. You can have an experience and not know any better. That's a possibility. And you can be an individual who's very wise. As a matter of fact, I would say that this is an example of wisdom, is that you learn from the experience of others, right? You can see people going through suffering and struggles and stuff like that and then be sensitive. That's completely fine. Like, I don't need to go ask someone who's been, oppressed and beaten and all this stuff for me to have compassion. Like, I can understand that. I don't need someone else's approval. Like, that would be wisdom. But our cultures come to a place where it's like, no, you can't say anything. Like, I assume these people, by the way, would generally not have a Judeo-Christian worldview. By the way, any of the people in here, including Dr. Boghossian. It's like, do they go around asking Christians whether their opinions are hurting us? Should they? No, they shouldn't. They want to believe that there's all these genders. Let them. I disagree with them. Right? But they can express their views. If they want to buy out a billboard that says big giant with a rainbow flag and it says there are this many genders, Like, should they buy another billboard before that says, warning, transgender ad coming up, close your eyes? Like, that's essentially what she's saying.
And I'm just wondering, like, are any of you all like trained professionals in trauma-informed care? Like, if a transgender individual were to come to the space and participate, and then there was a triggering response where they needed emotional support, like, are you ready to support that? Because this conversation can bring up a lot of emotions, and the people that are kind of working within it could be really triggered. But if no one's there as like an advocate or support, it could be pretty detrimental to the community you're asking. So I just want to like frame that. If you're not having like an advocate there as someone that can like be an emotional support or regulation for the people that are potentially harmed or triggered in this conversation, whether they're participating or not, like that's a potential thing to think about and could be a flaw in the system, because you need to have someone to be able to support that emotionally, mentally, and for people's trauma. So if you're not, it's kind of like these people might leave and feel like without any support or any understanding of what they just went through. So
yeah,
just to think that.
And we know people who are in the gender minority experience higher rates of suicidal ideation, higher rates of anxiety and depression, and like they're seeing messages like this all throughout their lives. And so campus is supposed to be a safe space where everyone can exist freely in their own identities and who they are, and be learning and be talking about these really, really important things within our culture and society. And by walking through this community member that we care about that should be in class today, learning about how to take care of their community and how to support marginalized individuals like themselves and others, can't participate today because they saw that message. Yeah. And that's
Okay. This is important. So, because it's not that I think we should be insensitive, right? It's not that I think we should be jerks or something like that. I don't think Dr. Boghossian's being a jerk by any stretch of the imagination. They were the ones sticking the middle finger out at him and cussing him out and telling him F you, okay? Not knowing anything about what's going on down below. Notice how these students are elevating the emotional response and reaction to a thing over and above truth. So the conversation doesn't start with, is there truth? Should we know it? How do we know it? What that looks like. I highly doubt they even believe there is such a thing as truth, by the way. What they're really interested in is being safe and having your own opinions. But even that's limited. I wish he had pushed them, but if he had, it would be something like, how accepting would you guys be with the conservative white male sitting in your classroom and just disagreeing with you guys? Would you guys have some, because you would be the majority in that classroom, would you guys have some kind of a trained professional sitting there for emotional support to this person? Now, frankly, I've seen in universities, colleges, and just Christians. I know someone from our church that was in a certain program that was predominantly of individuals who agreed with this kind of, and they were traumatized. And regularly had conversations like they didn't know what to do with themselves, because every time they went to class they felt like they're being oppressed and suppressed by these opinions, and they didn't feel like they actually have the freedom to speak out and share their mind and their opinion on these subjects because they disagreed with it. But it was just like there's no room for any of that dialogue. And I would assume that would be the case in this classroom. If I was sitting in this classroom, would they provide someone for emotional support for me? Would they have a trained professional? And what kind of like criteria is this? Like, you need to walk around with trained professionals who are like grief counselors, because you might potentially it's not even insult but harm, or it's just their subjective reaction to a thing. Like, what happened? Like, we can't dialogue. Like, what do you do at dinner? What do you do like for Christmas when you go over to your parents' house or your grandparents' house and somebody says something that you might be offended by? Do you just scramble for a professional to counsel you? How affluent we are. Man, there's people in the world right now. There's kids. There's 5-year-olds that are getting their limbs blown off. They're going to need counseling. Yeah, and not to undermine. Look, I think there's a lot of people that do need counseling, and therapy and all that, in not only in like the transgender or whatever queer community or something like that, just in all parts of life. We all go through some crazy stuff. We go through some crazy traumas, right? I highly doubt any one of these people knows what it's like to go hungry, right? They might. Maybe I'm judging that. I do, right? As like growing up in a war-torn country and stuff like that. And so you deal with some of this stuff. You kind of learn to deal with them, and it matures you and changes you in various ways. But are we that affluent where we're just asking for anybody that does any kind of a public discourse to have a trained professional with them? Okay, we're going to get to some of the comments, by the way. I'm going to hold off to the end. I want to finish this, okay? We're about halfway through, more than halfway through. Let's jump back into it, guys.
That's what we mean by harm. And honestly, I don't even think adding a question mark is enough. I think it should be more of what is your perspective on gender identity? Because then you're opening up the question, or gender in general, right? Because we know that it's not just about identity, it's about who that person is. And by really framing it in the binary, that's where there's harm.
Can I put in like my 2 cents as a non-binary person?
Please, yes.
Cool. I am gender non-conforming. I use they them pronouns. Do you know what that means?
I believe so, yes.
Are you aware of like the theory of social constructionism?
Yes.
So
I'm a gender studies scholar.
yeah. So I'm much younger than you. These are all, this is all very new. I understand. Like my parents are boomers. They're in their 60s. They've had a really hard time understanding. So I've had to explain this to a lot of people in your generation. So you're aware of social constructionism. You're aware of gender as a social construct. When you say there are only 2 genders, those 2 genders are just social constructs that we made up. From birth, you were assigned a male at birth because you have a penis, I'm assuming. You present as male. Do you identify as male?
Are you asking if I identify as male?
Your gender.
I identify as male.
Because you were assigned a male at birth. Are you cis?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure where you're going with this. I'm trying to understand where you're going.
That the idea of there being only 2 genders is a social construct because we have this idea of being assigned female at birth, assigned male at birth. Now, I'm non-binary.
Okay, so here's what's the issue here that I have. She just assumes that that's true. Like, oh, gender is a social construct. Says who? Right, like, I get, like, in your circle, in whatever this social... I'm assuming these are a bunch of sociologists, by the way, social workers. I think they say that earlier, and they're in front of that department. You guys, or like scientific data, people who disagree, philosophers, all sorts of people, other sociologists who just disagree with you, right? They just think you're wrong. That gender, are you familiar with this theory, social constructivism? Yeah, I'm familiar with it. Oh, it's true. No, I could be familiar with it and think it's wrong. It's a bad theory that you're just assigned your gender at birth, and then therefore that's what I identify as. No, I think I am a male because I'm a male, right? And I think you're a female. And I think if you have questions and concerns about that, then there could be all sorts of different reasons for that. Like, we should sit down and talk about it. Not just assume because you feel that way, then it must be that. Right? I just think that's like pretty commonsensical. Like, someone can feel a certain way, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the case. I mean, why do they feel like that? We should ask a bunch of why questions. Right? Look, if my child came to me and said that they feel like, let's just say my son came to me and said that he feels like he is a female, right? I would have a conversation with him, like why he thinks that. Why does he think he's a girl? And if he says something to me like, well, because I like the color pink, and I'm a girl because I like pink because girls like pink, then I would just let him know that, hey, that has nothing to do with your maleness or your femaleness to like pink. Pink's just a color people like. That's a social construct. But like your genetic identity, your biological makeup, that's a completely different issue. I love she just assumes this is true and goes, let me educate you. You're a boomer, right? You're like my parents. You guys just don't get that. Even though he just said, by the way, and I don't know how true that he says I'm a gender studies scholar. And he might be doing research in all those areas. I'm not sure, but she just assumes he doesn't know what she's talking about because her experience, I think she believes this, that her experience is more valid and she knows more about it because she's experienced than somebody who would like potentially have studied the subject.
Something that I have learned about myself over the last 6-7 years. After I was a teenager, I learned about sociology. I learned about gender as a social construct, and I realized that I don't fit into the box of just a cis woman. Okay, my gender is completely I feel like in the moment. I'm not just one solid thing. Sexuality, gender, these are all social constructs that we've created within our society, our binary society, where we've decided there's only male or female. So many people don't fit into that. And like, why do you feel like you're a man? Because you've been socialized to believe these things are associated with being a man. These things are associated with being a woman. There's only 2 boxes. But you don't have to conform to that. That's just what society has told you from birth. Someone said, a doctor said, this person has a penis. I'm going to assume that they have to be a man and fit into this box their whole life. But why? That's just.
I would love to hear other voices if you wanted to say something.
Engaging in this debate feels useful.
Do you feel that this is a debate?
That's your response? When you say, I want to hear from everyone else.
No, I do want to.
I didn't actually care or hear what you
No, I listened and I'm processing. Would you like me to engage her?
I want to hear from him.
You want to hear from him?
Actually, no, I want to hear from him.
Okay. Do you have anything to say?
I actually don't want to hear from him.
I just want to make sure. So
Okay, so I think that guy's a jerk, by the way. He's. Oh, there's another guy in the back. Oh, I missed him. There's another dude right there. But but I shouldn't be assuming, right? So how do you have conversations? You can't, right? Like I got to go interview every single one of these people to make sure whether they actually identify as male, female, or whatever else, non-binary, whatever, gender fluid, and that guy's just being a jerk, I think. And I think he says it. He says, I just came down to disrupt this. And he's not, I think, trying to have a decent conversation. Okay.
this is what I want. I don't want, the reason that I'm more than happy to engage you. The reason that I said that is you have how many people here? 15, I'm guessing. No, but no, the reason I said that is because I don't want you to walk away and someone to say, you didn't give me a chance to talk. So I didn't give her a chance to talk before, but that's only because I was listening to what you were going to say. And I realized that the classes here aren't a lot of time. And the reason that I switched from what she had, and I'm more than happy to listen to her, is because I don't want people.
Sorry, they just told you their pronouns and their lived experience.
Okay, then okay, so instead of getting.
The experience of someone that doesn't conform to what I.
Okay, so this individual just told me that, and I'm trying to be reasonable, and I think it's better to have a conversation than for you guys to give me the finger and yell "fuck you." So you wanted to say something? Go ahead.
It's already been you.
Aren't you the guys that made up a bunch of academic data and submitted it to
to
journals?
address
Pretty
that
sure
she
that's
did. Like just address you just called this person a
Okay.
and they just told you their gender was
Okay, well, I apologize, and I say they.
that's the harm being done that we were talking about.
Do you accept my apology? Okay.
It's the generation. It's a generational, education. If you
Okay, so
and want to
Go ahead.
change and learn, that's great. I love that, and I accept your apology.
so isn't it better to have a conversation about this than to scream at someone from the rooftop?
Oh, I don't know who, I certainly didn't scream at you from the rooftop. Did any of you guys scream?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
So you guys were screaming and yelling "fuck you" to me and giving me the finger.
We were just saying, please go away. You're not welcome.
No, I said fuck you.
I said
Okay. Okay. So
Can I just?
In the conversation.
My goal is to disrupt this.
no.
I don't want any more harm to
So
yeah.
okay. So I understand that you believe.
Okay, so that's nuts, right? Like, so my goal is to disrupt this because you're gonna do more harm, so I'm just gonna harm you, right? Like, I'm not actually going to engage you. I'm not going to dialogue with you. I'm not going to try to convince you you're wrong. I think the lady, the one that said the they them pronouns, is actually the kindest out of this whole group, right? And that give and take was very interesting. It's like he called her a she, and she doesn't want to be called a she, and he's like, "Do you accept my apology?" They say yes. I just, by the way, it's just weird to me, like when it comes to the English language of referring someone as a they, but whatever. And I'm not very sure whether I would actually have done that. Not sure, but it's like, sure, hey, moving on. Sorry, accept the moving on. But that dude's got to be a jerk to say, hey, you know, the F in this, F in that. I'm not gonna let you do harm. I wonder if he had the ability to like actually do physical harm, whether he would, to stop harm being done. That'd be a very interesting question to ask.
So, I can't remember where that over there she moved, but I understand that you believe this stuff, and we live in a democracy, and other people don't have those beliefs, and I want to ask people if the reasons they have for their beliefs are justified, and this is that experiment.
Your thought experiment, we actually have to go. We're not part of the thought experiment. We're all social workers, and we saw this harm being done, and we just wanted to come here with curiosity and also some information.
And do you feel that
there's no harm being done. There's a conversation being had. There's zero harm being done. If people are getting offended and hurt, then look, there's plenty of things in life that are going to offend and hurt us. We have to learn to deal with it. That's just the reality of the situation. Like, he's not out there beating people up.
spoken? Do you feel that if anybody else has something to say that you haven't had an opportunity to speak?
Do you feel like you've learned anything or taken?
But that doesn't answer my question. I just asked if anybody else would like to speak. If you'd like to speak, I'm standing here. Okay.
But I think to Joel's point, we hope that this was informative and helpful, and sorry if saying fuck you hurt your feelings. And
no, it didn't hurt my feelings.
But I'm glad, because our student who was hurt, we're worried about them, and potentially many, many others. And so that's why we came down to talk to you, just because we have a personal connection.
Well, I'm glad. Isn't it better to have a conversation with someone than to?
Yes.
I mean, isn't that what the whole enterprise should be about?
It's not safe for everybody to have that conversation.
Sometimes it's hard to just have a simple conversation.
Yeah.
Especially when you're doing it like every fucking day of your life.
Yeah. This is something we're fighting for and advocating for. This is our job and what we care about, what we're passionate about. So sometimes it's hard to keep all those emotions in when we see someone that we care about being harmed.
And do you think that the best way for people to understand, what is the best way for people to understand your point of view?
This right now, showing up.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, advocating.
Advocating for the people that may feel like they don't have a voice.
Okay, so the people who watch this, because this is being videoed, do you think that the people who watch this, who don't agree with you, as a result of having watched this, will then agree with you?
I'm not asking them to agree with me.
But don't you want to facilitate social change?
I'm asking you to have a different perspective to understand where we're coming from, because we came down here to try to understand where you're coming from.
Did you?
And I don't think that anyone.
Did you really?
Okay, so I suspect, by the way, that the reason why she's saying we're not trying to convince you of anything, it's a different perspective and stuff. And again, I'm suspecting here, right? I'm assuming something. Is that she doesn't actually believe there is such a thing as truth. So if there is no such a thing as truth, then it all becomes opinions. It all becomes perspective. It's the way you were raised and how you can change and, be dynamic or whatever like that. There's an underlying assumption there, I think. And whether generally they don't believe there's a truth, or whether specifically they don't think there's a truth about like gender and sex and all that, that's the reason why they're saying it. And they say, we came down to understand it. And he pushes back here. Says, did you really come down here to understand my perspective, to listen to me, to actually have a dialogue? Or did you come here to insult me, or maybe even, like I think the non-binary person was saying, and that guy was saying at the end, hey, did you learn anything like that? Like, we came to educate you, because you're an ignorant boomer, and so we're gonna educate you. That's the condescending kind of view that I see, at least here.
Really though?
Decide if this is
Okay, but you have to please be honest with me. Is that really why you came down, to understand?
yeah, yes.
We were very.
Okay, and what is your understanding of why I'm doing this?
Let's care about how you.
It's the impact.
What I'm sorry, what I haven't heard from you. What is it?
It's not.
I just want to tell you, we don't care about your thought experiment. We care about
The human.
the impact that it's having on.
Okay, so you didn't come down to understand why I'm doing this then.
We came down here to tell you like what you're doing is harming others.
Right, so you didn't come down to understand. That's why I asked you to please be honest.
I really, truly do want to understand why this even
Just
exists.
because we didn't want to know how your game works doesn't mean we weren't coming down here to.
So what is it that you understand for why I'm doing this? If you said you came down to understand why am I doing this? No, but this is, you've made a claim. You've made a claim. Right. This is what?
Maybe you'll watch the video and have some.
What do you think the result of people watching this video will going to be?
What's your intent? What is the impact it's having?
That's all we're
What
asking.
harm is being done?
Let's see. Well, there you have it. Like, it has nothing to do with, this is a thought experiment. We're trying to learn something, truth, university, knowledge, understanding, character building, right? None of that matters. What we care about, essentially, the view is that, like how you harm people. This is a worldview, by the way, it is impossible to maintain. Because then you have to ask yourself, every single thing you say, you got to apologize. Every single thing you say, you got to qualify. You got to nuance it, because there will be someone out there somehow that's going to get offended and hurt and harmed, according to them, by what you have to say. Look, all this entire video I've made, I'm sure is going to, in their view, harm a bunch of people. So if I'm harming people, by the way, here's where it gets dangerous. If I'm harming people, what is the logical thing to do? I mean, look, if someone is harming my child, let's just say physically harming, even emotionally, like attacking and stuff like that, right? Like verbally abusing. What's the logical thing to do? Protect my child, stop that person. This is where it gets dangerous. This is where it becomes an issue of our freedom of speech. Because if you're actually harming someone, then the logical next step is to silence you. Because you're harming people. Why would we allow you to speak? And then the free enterprise of ideas, especially on the university campus, just disappears. It becomes a echo chamber, and it has become an echo chamber where people are just hearing ideas that they agree with, and anybody who comes from the outside, outside of those ideas is what I mean, is not respected and honored. Let's get some of the comments and some of the ideas here. Pete, what's up, man? Or, yeah, PT. Just got to the stream. The video you're showing us is already saddening to me. What happened to our universities? Hey, I agree with you, man. Look, by the way, I went to both my college experience and then my my graduate level work were at private universities. By the way, I was exposed to all sorts of contrary ideas, theologically, culturally, like all sorts of stuff. I think if I had gone to a public university, I would not have been exposed to as many diverging or different ideas, contrary ideas to mine. I absolutely felt the same way when I was in college classroom at times. Interesting, right? And I was talking about like how you just kind of feel oppressed. I felt scared to share my thoughts on certain topics when they were brought up because of how others might have reacted. Man, I've heard this so much. I have heard this so much. It's saddening. And then it's the like these individuals are tone deaf, right? Like they don't realize what's going on around them. It's like we hold these opinions and they're very emotional for some reason. Like once you share an idea that's contrary, like all the emotions like just jump at you. Nobody wants to have like a reasonable conversation, right? If you're like, I don't think abortion is a good thing because abortion kills innocent babies, it's not, there's no counter argument that no, here's some scientific data as to that that's not a baby and stuff like that. The counter to that is you hate women, you want to oppress women, you're a chauvinist pig who wants us to go back to whatever certain time period. It's like no. So yeah, I've heard that story so much, man. Matthew says, I'm a few minutes behind. Well, that's okay. Hopefully you've caught up by now. But I'm watching the video and they treat the marginalized like fragile babies, not adults. This is very interesting. Like we have to protect them. And I've seen this in the race conversation, right? Where predominantly white liberals, and I'll share a little story that happened to me. Maybe I'll turn this into a short at the airport. But where predominantly white males feel like they have to protect these marginalized groups like black people and Hispanics. Here's the story. I was traveling somewhere and I didn't want to go through the gigantic x-ray machine. And so for quite a bit of time, I would just ask them to personally pat me down and then, I'd get on my way. And so I'm at the airport and I got my beard going. It was much longer than this. And, they pull me aside. This very nice African-American gentleman comes to me and says, here's, I'm going to pat you down behind my hands, and all of that. And as he's patting me down, I want to say like in her 60s, right? This lady comes to me and she speaks to me very slowly. Okay. Like, and here's what she says to me. Are they mistreating you? Now she's assuming a bunch of stuff there, right? She's assuming that they've picked me out, not my voluntary choice. They picked on me. She's assuming by my looks that I don't speak English very well. That's why she was talking to me very slowly and kind of in a louder voice. Like, are they mistreating? And she's assuming I'm probably like I'm like an Arab or something like that, right? I'm Middle Eastern just because of my looks. And so I looked at her and I said, no, ma'am, I've asked for this. Thank you very much. And again, like if that's not racism. I mean, is she being caring? Yeah, maybe. But is she trying to go out of her way to baby me and not treat me like an adult? Like I know what's going on here. Right? That's a personal experience, man. I went through that. It's like I don't need you. Dude, I came to this country as an 11-year-old who didn't know English, and I've seen my parents struggle, and I've seen my family struggle, and my brother struggle, and I've struggled, and I had to learn a language, and people mispronounce my name. Even though it's an English name, like I've gone through it all. Like I don't need some, guilt-ridden lady to approach me at the airport, talk to me really slowly, like I'm really dumb without knowing any English, and try to protect me. Unfortunately, this is becoming common. Even at my school, I attended a meeting where they claimed Christianity is promoting intolerance and they must unhitch from this colonialism. Or Christians must unhitch from this colonialism. Jasmine, we got to look at the details of that, right? Like, what does that even mean? Right? These are like trigger terms. Unhinge, intolerance, colonialism. Like, how much of that is Christianity? How much of that is culture? How much of that is people using Christianity for their own purposes and ends? There's quite a bit of that in this conversation. And so maybe sometimes and maybe not at other times. We just can't assume that it's all bad all the time, always. And this is what these people are assuming. How would the world look today if Noah's flood didn't happen? Man, that's not the conversation here. It really is not. Cody, how's your day going? Thanks, man. It's going pretty good. Gonna take my son to soccer in about 15 minutes or so. But look, I wanted to jump on here. This is a video I watched pretty early in the morning. And again, this is someone, Peter Boghossian, Dr. Peter Boghossian, is someone I disagree with. I'm very sure if I sat with him and we discussed 10 subjects, maybe one day I will sit with him. That'd be really cool to have him on my show and have a conversation. If anybody knows him, let him know. There's another Armenian guy that would like to have a conversation with him. And if we brought up like 10 things, let's just say from like socially speaking, religiously speaking, philosophically speaking, maybe we would disagree on like 7 of them. Okay? I don't want to say 10 because I don't think we would disagree on everything. But maybe we would disagree on 4 of them. I'm not sure. I just tend to think that we'd probably disagree more than we would agree. And he's on a campus doing street epistemology, and somebody had an issue with him calling it street epistemology because it is not a street. I mean, how petty? How petty does someone need to be to say, but this is technically not a street? It's like, okay, we'll call it university epistemology. But the university is supposed to be a safe space. No, the university should be a place and is a place of education and being confronted and challenged by ideas that are different than what you've been taught, right? You should be challenged in a university setting, right? The whole concept of the university is to unify different areas of learning, right? It's to bring it into a place where, preferably, ideally, character formation is happening as well. You're growing up, you're maturing, not you're being protected and babied, so you can never get out of that. And whenever you do get out of what happens when these students leave these universities? They're going to expect that at their job place. They're going to expect that at the dinner table. They're going to expect that when they're walking down the street. Rather than saying, no, here are the reasons. And if they think they're right, by the way, and let them push that into education and let people make up their minds in the dialogue of ideas, right? And then it's like, oh, but some people are going to be hurt by what you're saying. By the way, a bunch of the stuff they said, I could get hurt over because it goes directly against my Christian worldview. Well, what does that mean? They shouldn't have the right to speak it or believe that stuff? No, man, I'd advocate for them believing that stuff all the time. I think they're wrong, but I'd advocate for them believing wrong stuff. But I don't think that favor would be returned to me, right? I don't think they would advocate me believing stuff that they disagree with, that they think is wrong. That's the difference. With that said, guys, thank you for jumping on here. I appreciate it. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. Throw a like here. Share this video out. I think it's been pretty decent reaction, and I haven't done many of these, but I would like to do a lot more of them. And I hope that you have a good night or good day, wherever you may be. And if you disagree with me, look, shoot me an email. info@apologiacenter.com. Leave a comment below if you disagree with me. Arthur, you're a jerk. And I'm not, by the way, but whatever. People leave all sorts of comments. Leave the comments. We can continue that conversation. Maybe we'll make another video. Maybe I can have you come on live here and have a discussion, because that's good for our society. It's good for us as people. So, with that said, God bless you guys. Enjoy this Armenian duduk here as we end the show. Take care. God bless. I'll see you next time.